Entrepreneurs have a weird problem. We crave people, energy, connection, and collaboration, and at the same time, we want everyone to leave us completely alone. We say yes to the invite, then regret it instantly. We dread it all week, and then somehow have the best time when we actually show up. Or we don't go at all, and we beat ourselves up for it. In today's episode of the podcast, we're talking about the push-pull that quietly runs a lot of entrepreneurs' lives. Isolation, obsession, burnout, and the lie that you should be able to will your way out of it. If you've ever thought, what is wrong with me, while living a life other people envy, this episode will feel uncomfortably familiar. Thanks for joining us here on The Entrepreneur Addict, the podcast where you learn to lead without losing yourself to your business. My name is Matt Tompkins. I am an entrepreneur/addict.
My name is Lance Pendleton, and I am also an entrepreneur and/addict.
And a slash?
And/addict.
So we just changing things up now?
Yeah,
That's
why
not
not?
what we
Slash
rehearsed
addict. No?
beforehand.
Okay, well,
He's just going off script again.
How?
Oh, God, this guy, ad-libbing with this guy. It's like you've done a few rounds of improv comedy workshops on the weekend. You think you can just roll.
Second City, baby.
You just rattle that off because that's the only improv.
It's the only improv that I know.
That's right.
That's literally
cool.
it.
Yeah, that's right.
I watched
But
the
you
Pee Wee
said it was such
documentary,
comedy.
and there was another one that I kind of remember. I watched the Pee Wee Herman documentary. Fascinating documentary, by the way.
Yeah.
And talk about entrepreneurs. Ooh, that's a really good episode.
There is this weird thing where like a lot of commonalities, like being an entrepreneur and being an entertainer and that aspirational figuring out this is an idea I'm going to make a living out of just doing something or being something or having an idea. A lot of similarities. I know we don't credit comedians, musicians with being entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and it's what's really interesting too, and particularly on comedians, I've heard very often that comedians struggle with getting sober because of the fact that they hold tremendous fear that if they get sober, they won't be funny anymore. Yeah, and like that to me is one of the saddest things because, it comes to this idea, we talk about isolation, and of course addiction creates isolation. So the disease wants you isolated. It wants you alone, it wants you sad, and it wants you desperate. That's where it loves to feed. And, I look at a lot of times the entrepreneurs that I work with, there's kind of this weird gray area where they want to be left alone, right? They just want peace and quiet, but they themselves create much of the chaos that then feeds them into having to be around all these people and doing this. That feels incredibly overwhelming. So then they need to go isolate. And it's this weird cycle that kind of goes around, but understandably so. Like you talk about the creativity part of it, like where are you most creative usually?
I'm most creative in, it kind of depends. I do work good in a group environment. There's a lot of comedians I know that like work better in either their group writing session or just by themselves. I'll come up with random creative ideas all the time. I call them creative because otherwise they're just really weird ideas that I come up with. But like, I'm always coming up with random creative ideas. I'm like, oh, we got to run with this, right? I'll be coming up with comedy bits now. Like, I'm not doing comedy anymore. Like, why do I need to come up with this? But that'd be a great bit. It'd be funny. Mm-hmm. And then, I usually send it to Meyer and he doesn't use it in his stand-up act because it wasn't that funny. But I think in a group atmosphere, I can be creative and productive as well. So I don't know. I don't have there's not really a set like rhythm of like, this is the proven place where I am most creative, but I do go down rabbit holes and I do love the freedom of isolation where it's like, there is no limitation. Like I can go down this rabbit hole as far as I want. So I love, even though I've said that like, I don't really recognize weekends. One thing I do love about weekends is like everybody goes away. Everybody goes away and you have time to just focus in. And it's like, I can zero in on this topic that I don't need to be zeroing in on for the next 48 straight hours.
Right.
Nobody's going to be checking in on me. I don't have to get up early. I can stay up as late as I want. It doesn't matter if I fall asleep drooling on my laptop, talking to ChatGPT. I can do it, right?
It's so funny you said that too.
Which is healthy for you.
Yeah. A very, very healthy place to be, clearly. My business partner is same way. Right? This is a man who is in the office. We actually were looking at new space to move into. And as they were touring us around the spaces, there was an office area that we walked into, really nice office. And the woman, as she walks us into this office, is like, oh, and this has a master suite bath and shower in it too. And he literally, without blinking, was like, this one's mine. I was like, that's the worst idea ever because now you really can live here. Like you would never go home to see the fam anymore at that point in time. But, Matt, like I asked the question because I really want to understand from your perspective. Yeah. My business partner will say the exact same thing. He will say, I love the weekends. I love the weekends because everybody disappears and I can get done all that I couldn't do during the course of the week because everyone else becomes a distraction. Where is that blended line though between you as an entrepreneur feeling like I need to be around other people combined then with I need to be left alone to be able to get done the stuff that I need to do?
It is blurred for sure because I look at the weekends and here's how you can tell me how common this is among other entrepreneurs that you work with, but weekends are approaching. It's like a wrap of the week. There's this excitement for the end of the week. And the weekend is here. And it's not because you're going to have time off, because you're not. You're going to actually put in more hours over those 2 days than you are maybe any other 2 single days during the week. But you're looking forward to the break from just everything, the demand, the pressure, the chaos. And so then you'll have a weekend where you work straight through. You do that. And it's like, you get a bunch of stuff done. Then you roll into the next week and now it starts to catch up on you because you've been up till 4 a.m. every day working on stuff. You haven't given yourself a break. You haven't had any rest. You haven't had any of the things that you need. You haven't eaten. I'll go days without eating. And it's not because it's because I get so obsessed and I'm focused on all these things. I forget to eat throughout the day. And it's like I've created this like unintentional intermittent fasting that is like partly why I look amazing. I mean, that's that. But no, I mean, it's not reality. It's
and
not
the humility is amplified even more.
It does. The humility, you're so grounded and so humble. If you can't pick up the sarcasm by now.
It's problem.
But no, in reality, then it rolls into the next weekend and you're still making all these promises that now become false promises. Oh, well, I'll get that done over the weekend. Oh, I'll get that done over the weekend. And then you hit the weekend. And then all of a sudden the ADHD, this is a thing with ADHD where your mind is working so fast and so in overdrive. There's 1,000 thoughts a minute for those 2 straight weeks without a break, and you crash. And then when you crash, you're out. You can sleep until 3, 4 p.m. in the afternoon because you're just that exhausted. Like for a while, I thought it was like depression. I'm like, well, I don't feel depressed. I know what that is. This is just exhaustion. And then now you just had a weekend where you didn't get any of those things done. Those false promises I mentioned. Yeah. Now you're rolling into the Monday and it's just anxiety starts to pick up. How far behind am I? I didn't get this done. I didn't get this done. I didn't get this done. You roll into Monday and then Monday's a packed day and you didn't get anything done again and it rolls into the next and it just starts to compound. It's the compound effect. And it just builds and builds and builds until you're pushed to the brink of, well, I'll turn to the old familiar thing that got me through it, which is the pill. The booze, whatever, the binge watching, the bad food, whatever it might be, the jumbo iced honey buns from the vending machine, which are delicious. Chef's kiss.
Disgusting.
But best thing to ever come out of a vending machine. So does that sound common?
100%.
Yeah.
And not only is it common, just so that you know, there's four things that are elevated compared to the normal, we'll call it normal. First of all, normal is a setting on a dishwasher. That's all it is these days. But consider the general population. The 4 highest things in entrepreneurs compared to normal population where they're much more heightened is 1, ADHD, 2, addiction, 3 is bipolar, and 4 is what we call anxiety/depression. Those are the 4 things that when you take each one of those as an entrepreneur, compare those to standard population, they're all higher than the average standard population. And that can't be coincidental in that sense. Like that is a core element, an area that when you start talking to entrepreneurs, the likelihood that you're talking to somebody, and that's the beauty of this podcast is we're talking about real things, the likelihood that the entrepreneur has one, more, or if not several of those is incredibly high.
Yeah.
Right. And that can't be coincidence. There is a part of that that's not coincidental.
It's either being an entrepreneur creates all these things, which we know is not possible.
Right.
That's not, or it's these people with these certain proclivities, these things are drawn to entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, we said proclivities too, to be honest.
Entrepreneurialism. They're drawn to being an entrepreneur because it feeds all those things.
Yeah.
It gives me something to be.
And think about isolation. If you think about isolation as an entrepreneur, think of the 4 things that we just talked about. I can't think of anything that drives someone further into isolation other than, again, the ADHD cycles of I need to be around people. It's where I get my energy and my excitement. And by the way, after I am in that element, I need everyone to f*** off because I need to be left alone and no one talk to me, right? Yep. Or you get into bipolar, which is the highs and the lows, the manic episodes that happen from that, which creates an isolation because, again, the bottom of the manic episode drives that. You look at then addiction in and of itself. I mean, your addiction disease wants you alone. Like that literally is where it thrives the most. And then you get the last part in that, which is the anxiety depression element, which when operating through that, now look, you've got either a depressive state or an anxiety disorder that's built up in which being around other people feels overwhelming in either option.
It was funny, and I say funny as in like a relatable sense. It's funny to me when I listening to your description of the entrepreneur and the accepting the invite, and like because I think that just struck. I mean, because that's happened so many times. We have this idealistic view of like, yes, I need to go to that. I want to go to that.
Right.
I should be going to that, and we accept it.
Right.
And then it's this, it's like, it's 2 from now. I don't have to deal with it. And then it starts to creep up. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, this event's in like 30 minutes. And I have been working. I haven't showered. And I'm like, I need like, this isn't like, no, I can't go. I don't want to go. And then the rumination starts. Rumination is something we haven't really gotten a lot into yet. But like, oh my God, the rumination out loud. Like, why do I do this? Why do I always do this? Like, I don't need to go. I shouldn't go. And
this person's going to be there, and I don't really want to see them. And what am I going to say if they're there?
And I look like hell. I can't, it's like, and then I haven't slept all night. I haven't done anything. It's like, it just turns into this vicious cycle. And then let's say you either do one of two things. You either say, you know what, F it. Like, I'm like, not going.
And then you feel badly that you didn't go.
And then you feel horrible that you didn't go. The guilt. And the shame. Or you go and you're like, there's like, I mean, I did this recently with an event, and I went and I finally got there. By the time I got there, there's only like 30 minutes left of the event. I missed, apparently I was called out like an introduction, and I wasn't there for it. So I was reminded of that happened when I was there. And like there was sparse for people there. So it was like, why did I even show? I showed up when the thing was basically almost over, and there was no point to me showing up then, but like, why was I late? It was all these things we're talking about. Like, so it's like these things, it's important to know that you're not alone when you experience that, because that's something you sharing with me, I didn't realize. I mean, it's funny, ironical how I've lived that. I don't know how many times, even recently.
And it's super common. And people talk about the isolationist nature of being an entrepreneur. They also think that it's a choice, but it's not. Much like in addiction, what happens is that there's a compulsiveness or a drive behind it, right? Where I know from a family standpoint, you look at addiction, you look at the entrepreneur mindset, entrepreneur behaviors, and the impact they have is always greatest in the family. Well, the isolation element is part of the reason that has such a big impact on it, because when you look at the isolation and why it's happening to tamp down most often anxiety. It's happening to tamp down a fear of something not going right or something not happening. It's happening because it's not necessarily a conscious choice of like, oh boy, I can't wait to isolate to the world. Basically, sleep in the bathtub in the fetal position, butt naked with my hand in a Pringles can. Like, that's not a conscious choice. I know I just described your weekend. I'm sorry, my bad. But I'm convinced at this point in time that people don't understand that is part of the process. Right? And it's not a conscious choice, because it's something that if you could stop, who wouldn't, right? Yeah. If you could just say, I'm going to have balance now and do this, well, we would, but it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah. And I think that's being aware of it is like it seems like such an obvious component, but I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs are aware of it. I mean, there's some things we talk about and we've had a lot of conversations about this, but I'm like, I wasn't aware that was like a thing. Like, I wasn't aware that I thought I was the only person who did that with accepting events, but, you become aware of it, but then like, what is it that you can do about it? Because I think part of it, like you're saying, and this is again, some of the interesting parallels between addiction and that mindset, if you will, that type, and the entrepreneur mindset, that type. One of the similarities is that the willpower, and like that's always one thing that like in going through my addiction it was hard to accept. In looking back, I'm like, why was it so hard to accept that I couldn't just will my way out of this? Because I think that's one misnomer is people from the outside in who have never been through addiction, they think, why don't you just stop?
Right.
And I've thought the same, even when I was going through my addiction. I remember people talking to me about alcoholism, and I'm like, I don't know, why don't you just stop?
Right.
And I'm going through addiction at the time, and I can't stop with something else. But until you go through it, it's like, it's hard for your mind to wrap around that truth. And like, it's also hard for your mind to wrap around that when you're going through it of like, why can't I just stop? Like, why is my willpower so weak? Why am I such a loser, pathetic? All the things that you've yelled at yourself as you pull out of the parking lot at work. Yeah. And it's like, and then you regret, like, why was I so mean to myself? Why am I so cruel to myself about these things? Like, but it's hard to accept that some things you can't just will your way out of.
I want to jump back on that though for a second, because it starts with actually bullshitting yourself. Because it starts with there isn't a problem. And you look at entrepreneurs and you look at how they operate and the way they're working, you know, whether it be they were taught that culturally, whether it's because they've listened to too many podcasts about like, you know, winning first thing in the morning, or like bullshit thing came out that week. It's about recognizing the fact that you, right from the word go, have to accept that this isn't normal. Right. And that's the first problem that I think most entrepreneurs, just like in addiction, it's like, no, there's no problem here. There's nothing to see here, folks. Like, of course, look, I'll give you a perfect example. To me, in my world, it was completely normal at the end of dinner with a group of people, when we left, to make an excuse to go back to the table like I left something and go finish all of the drinks that were left on the table, because that was wasteful. It was a waste of money, Matt. Like that was a horrible thing to do, right? That was normal. And anybody listening to this right now that doesn't have alcoholism is going to go, what the actual Anybody that has alcoholism is going to go, yeah, no, that makes sense. I probably, you know, I did the same thing. Like you have to understand that what we justify as acceptable and normal is the first step of then making the changes that you have to make to then understand the willingness to go, how do I then make a change in this?
To same analogy, and I think anybody who's had an addiction to pills or prescription medications, when you're ever at somebody's house, doesn't matter if they're family or strangers, you check the medicine
cabinet, right? It's like,
you check the medicine cabinet and look and see, what do they got? What do they got? Anything good? Nope. All right.
Well, and it, you know, it's so strange because I think for so many people you know, in society, from their perspective, the idea that behavior is abnormal, right? It is abnormal behavior, but why do we then look at that abnormal behavior as something that needs to be hidden then, versus I'm looking at an abnormal behavior and then we're going to help treat that to help other people recognize that it's not a choice.
Yeah.
Like I didn't consciously choose to go back and finish drinks at a table.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think like you look at whether it's addiction or isolation, I'm not choosing to not have any friends.
Right.
I mean, like, I'm not choosing to like, you know, go from the life of the party to having no life at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm not choosing these things, but it's almost like the addiction or the business or they're one and the same is choosing this for me.
Right.
And so being aware of it is challenging. And like, I think that's a lot of the self-aware factor is something that is very challenging, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs. I think it's a rare thing to be naturally self-aware,
right,
and want to learn and adapt and apply, be coachable. You know, it is one of the, I would say, qualifying distinctions between just somebody who starts a business and somebody who has a successful business.
Right,
is that ability. But it is hard to do. And so then, like, I think now, like, what's the thing you can do to that situation where, okay, I'm aware of this,
right,
but you're telling me I have no like willpower, so I can't will my way through this. So what is it that I do?
Yeah. And so look, what's the first thing that you can do? First of all, I think there's a little bit of radical acceptance that needs to happen, that there's parts of this that you can control and parts that you can't control. And so I want to separate out the difference sometimes between addiction or ADHD and things like that. ADHD is a neurological disorder, right? And hence neurodivergency and things like that. There's a difference between neurology, human behavior, addiction. They all have similarities, but you know, from an addiction standpoint, what can one do? Well, again, recognizing that certain behaviors may not be exactly normal is the first step to recognizing then, great, well, what can I do about that? When it comes to the other elements of things that are neurologically driven, it's practicing radical acceptance. And that idea is that on some days, you're going to be on fire. It's all going to be gravy. You're moving 100 miles an hour. All the stuff is happening. And on some days, yeah, you're going to be living in a 3-story McMansion overlooking a lake, wearing the same clothes for 3 straight days, right? Eating out of a Ben & Jerry's tub because that was the closest thing that you had to any form of sustenance, and really just doing nothing but working, only to then feel like shit on Monday with both a physical, spiritual, and emotional hangover, just like you were still using, right? That it's just radical acceptance, the fact that there's gonna be weekends like that. But how do I then become aware of the fact that that happened, right? Addicts and I think entrepreneurs often share a lack of experiential learning. They don't learn from previous experiences because certain mechanisms just take over.
And just to clarify a couple things, it's Casey's General Stores cookies and cream ice cream, not Ben and Jerry's.
Sorry.
And I always change clothes. Okay, that's one thing. I will at least change my clothes.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's way ahead of a lot of folks. Some of the folks that I know in entrepreneur world will literally be in the same EJs for 3 straight days and just cranking away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm naked, but that's a different podcast.
I didn't need to eat today. That's fine, but you know.
All right. Well, I think being aware and accepting, those are the 2 big things.
Yeah.
I think today we can take away, and now you can your business. If this episode made you realize how much isolation and burnout are quietly driving your behavior, don't ignore that. Entrepreneur Addict helps you recognize these patterns and build healthier ones without losing your edge. Check out the link in the show notes to learn more.